believe in starting these things on time.
Okay.
So, hi there. I'm Drew Neiser, CEO and founder of Renegade, author of the book back here, the CMO's Periodic Table. Wait, there it is. Yay. And I'm here with Chip Rodgers, who is the SVP of Experience Marketing at Ciena. Good afternoon. Good morning. Chip, where are you based, by the way?
Thanks, Drew. Well, that's an interesting question. We live in Philadelphia. I'm with Ciena. Actually, I'm VP.
Right.
You just gave me a promotion. So.
I think you deserve a promotion. So, as far as I'm concerned, you're president.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And Ciena is in Hanover, Maryland, right between kind of south of Baltimore and DC. So it's we have a daughter that's a junior in high school, and so we're staying here through the end of the year. I'm commuting back and forth, and
right,
make the move then later on. So
very cool. So at least we're on the same time zone. So let's first. So Chip and I met when he was at SAP. You were managing a community, which at the time for SAP, I think had 2.5 million. Subscribers, and I wrote an article on that because at the time I hadn't really heard of a community that was that effective, and also everybody was talking about Facebook as the place for communities, and we've all learned that that's just so not true. Let's go back down memory lane a little bit, Chip, and talk about the SAP community and some of the things that. You remember, and why do you think that was so successful?
So first of all, Drew, thank you for putting this on and having me here. And this will be a lot of fun today, and I'm excited to looking forward to it. And in fact, I remember very well. In fact, sometimes I still quote some of your quotes from that article. From Fast Company at the time, and I think you used the word social media juggernaut, which I'm like, okay, I like that one. So I think your question about why, I think it goes back to the original, reason that we had for building the community. SAP was started in around 2003, and SAP was really transitioning from a product company to a platform company. We just launched NetWeaver, and the whole concept was, to try and bring in developers and technical folks, experts, that would, understand the platform, learn about the platform, share ideas, share cool things, tips and tricks and best practices and code snippets and all that. It was a technical, actually, when it started as SAP Developer Network. It originally was SDN.
Right.
And then we changed it to SAP Community Network as we started bringing in new audiences. And, I think that was it. There was a core group of people that had, a reason for connecting and a reason to be there. And, and then it really just took off from there. And
so, one of the things that amazed me at the time is that, with something that large, that you actually had these folks and you could communicate with them and they could provide product feedback. And I imagine they also kept your toes on the fire pretty closely as well, that there was a fair amount of give and take.
Well, definitely, and the interesting thing about a community like that, when we first launched the community, there were people that were like, "Why do we want to do this? Just what's the do we want to create a place for people just to complain?" And but I think there was a good we had a senior board member actually who. At the time, just believed in the concept, and we sort of pushed through. And the thing that's interesting is we found, first of all, you have to grow the community, you have to nurture the community. It takes work, right? I mean, it doesn't just happen. You can't just turn on a system and expect it all to happen. You have
right.
People that that on the team and your own experts that are passionate about it as well, and interact with the community and nurture it and encourage people and bring new people in and all those things. But what we found is that as the community grew and sort of developed its own persona, that people, there might be the occasional thing where someone sort of goes off and has some complaint, rants, right? But a lot of the time, we didn't feel like we needed to jump in right away and respond, and we sort of just let it go for a little bit. And a lot of times the community would chime in, and they'd say, hey, it's not my experience, or let me tell you about what I saw, and there would be a sort of active dialogue in the community, and to the point that if there was something that was about a product, we would alert the product manager and say, hey, watch this thread, watch what's happening. And they'd kind of watch for a while, and maybe they'd jump in, maybe they wouldn't. But, it wasn't the kind of thing where you felt like you were, under siege or, anything like that. It's just, it's just an open dialogue. But the positive, the benefits were that exactly, that it became an open dialogue. It in many ways sort of transformed, I think, SAP and the brand of SAP, from in the early 2000s, being sort of much more conservative and a little bit closed in a way, and then sort of growing. Now, social media, there were a lot of things that were happening at the same time, but I think community had a part in that, and in sort of having a place for people to engage and open, conversations and talk to customers and partners and really, talk openly about, where we saw the market going, about our products, about, the benefits and all those things.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing that impressed me the most is, lots and lots of companies talk about customer centricity, right? They say, oh, we really care about the customer. And then you say, do you have a customer community? And they go, no. And how do you deal with customer feedback? Well, it goes into a queue. Do you offer 24/7 customer? They say no, but we're customer centric. One of the interesting things about a community is that you can't be more customer centric as long as you are really listening to what they're saying. And were there instances where you could tell that the community had really identified a problem that needed fixing, and your engineers needed to pay attention, and you needed to bring the engineers in to sort of listen and say and respond?
Well, we actually, good question. When we, first we built the community and kind of had it growing for a while. And then we got to the point we added, after we had started, we added and now they've gotten almost common, but an idea place area for people to have ideas. And, very much, I mean, we had, people would contribute ideas for the product. The community would be able to comment on it, but they'd also vote it up and down, right? So the better ones would float up to the top. And, so you, again, have this sort of open discussion and conversation going on about maybe some challenges, and some of the things, those ideas would then get, adopted we'd accept them into the product teams and put them on the roadmap and all those good things.
Well, and I want to stop you on that one, because that's a really interesting. I'm going to let Ben in. I don't know who Ben is, but I'm letting him in. Do you know Ben Tate?
I don't.
A couple of streams today.
Wow. Hello, Ben.
Hey.
How are you? Where are you phoning in from?
England. I'm calling from England.
Nice. And do you have a question for Chip?
I'm from England. Yeah. The question is how do you keep up your career and everything to keep good reputation?
Well, all right. So, Chip, how do you keep your career and reputation going? And I'm gonna Ben, I'm gonna let Chip answer that question, and I'm going to click you off for a second. All right.
Yeah, it's a great question, Ben. And actually, you know, one of the things that we found very valuable with the community that I think, you know, a lot of people find valuable in the community is exactly that. It's about reputation. And we started with SAP. We started, you know, early on. We had a reputation system. It was points based, and it was pretty, you know, rudimentary at the beginning. And we grew it actually to the point that about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we added an entire, you know, gamification capability where there was badging and leaderboards and, you know, and on all that. And, you know, to Ben's point, that's exactly what the community helped do, and it's why people really love to contribute. You know, first of all, it's sort of the altruistic, hey, I want to help somebody with something that they're working on, or I have some knowledge to share. But then, you know, community members also get competitive, and you'd sort of see, you know, people trying to work their way up on the leaderboards, and we created a program called the Mentor Program, and it was really through the community that you know, they were the top community folks, and we, you know, it was through the community contributions and the kinds of things that the way they interacted with the community and the way that they built their reputation in the community that gave them an opportunity to be a part of the Mentor Program. So community is very much about reputation. It's sort of the fuel, it's the engine or the fuel that fuels the engine, I guess, is, you know, when you have a community thrives on great content, but content comes from people contributing, and people contribute because they want to help people, but they also want to build their reputation within the community. So
interesting. Hey, and I couldn't tell if Ben was asking about personal reputation versus brand reputation, and so if we're talking about personal representation, Ben, a couple of thoughts there. In my book, I cover a number of people who have built incredible reputations in the industry. And what's interesting is that all of them are very clear about who they are and what their brand stands for as individuals. They actually have brand statements and they have a reputation that they believe strongly in, and most of them have a purpose and a mission that they want to fulfill, and they see both their business life and their personal life as means of executing delivering against their personal brand. So I think if your question was about, you know, how do you build your own reputation, you know, it starts with a strategy, knowing what is that reputation that you want, and then going out and doing the things that will make it real. And Chip, I want to get back to you on a thing. There's a funny story from Dell, which, as you know, set up Idea Storm. I think it was called Idea Storm, right? And all the community on Idea Storm said, hey, we want a Linux laptop, right? And so Dell went ahead and put a Linux laptop up on their website, and nobody ordered it. And so it kind of reminded me of, you know, of the famous Ford quote about, you know, if I asked people what they want, they would have said faster horses. As a brand and as a company, how did you try to, you know, because you want to listen to the community, right? They're suggesting these things, you know, they could suggest the equivalent of a Linux to you. How did you filter these suggestions? Because people could vote this thing and they say, that's a great idea. But it wouldn't produce any sales and nobody would actually use it. So how did you differentiate in those
Yeah,
ways?
no, that's a great question. And we actually, so anytime we would put up an idea area, you know, in many ways we were just a channel. So we were not necessarily, we had a lot of experts in that worked on the community team, but that wasn't our main role. We had you know, this whole organization of product experts at SAP that were, you know, engaged and very much a part of it. So we relied on them in many ways to make those kinds of decisions. And you mentioned earlier, like, hey, if the community is going to talk, you need to be listening. It's before we would actually create an idea area, we worked very closely with the product teams to make sure that they were ready for it, right? And that they were totally bought in, and that they wanted to, because the last thing, to your point, the last thing you want to do is open up, okay, let's do an idea, thing around, SAP Mobile, for example. And the mobile team's not bought in, and everybody contributes ideas, and they just sort of sit there, right? So, very much a part of, the product teams have to be very much a part of that process, and have commitments to watch what's going on and to engage and answer questions and accept some of those things into the product. But then ultimately they need to make the decision to say, well, this is really, great and interesting and love the idea, but it doesn't quite fit, or we don't really see the commercial, market opportunity or whatever. And those are product decisions that product teams are. But it's a, interesting
balance of how you weigh it. The other thing that occurred to me is that here you have 2.5, and I know it's a lot more than that now, millions of members and a lot of tech power and developer power. I mean, did you ever think about hackathon? I mean, these folks could, write the program to change the world, not to mention SAP. Did you put that community to work for you?
Well, so when I was with SAP, I actually wore two hats, and one was the community, but then the other actually was running our tech ed and technical events. So we had tech ed and then also tech tour events. Tech ed was, kind of our, our mainstay big events. We would have 6,000 in Las Vegas and 5,000 in Europe and 10,000 in India and Bangalore.
Right.
People always come. And we had an event in Shanghai as well. With actually last time we ran it, we had 4,000 people there. So, but there was a reason that they were connected, because they're all a lot of the same community. So we would have these online conversations going on throughout the year in the online community. But then we called it our annual family reunion, where everybody would come back together and go to the tech ed events, and we'd have, we had hackathon, kind of programs. We'd have a demo jam, where people were, creating great things and demoing on stage, and we'd use applause meter to, everybody would, make a lot of noise, and there'd be a winner at the end of the night. And then, there was all very technical. It was technical learning and sharing ideas and best practice. And then, you get to know people, you meet people there, and then continue the conversation online again once the event was over. So I'm not sure if that exactly answers your question.
No, but that's interesting. And I was going to ask you actually about the offline to online interaction, because again, that's when it really becomes powerful, when these people actually get to know each other. And it's so funny, it's like you have friends on Twitter, and then you finally meet them in person, go, wait, there's a real person here. That's really cool. So
yeah, I think it's we always thought it was really important that, because it is when you're face to face, and you have those sort of walking down hallway conversations, or you're going out for a beer after after the sessions are over, and that kind of time is really important to strengthen those relationships and really make it make them solid, and then you continue it online.
So okay,
Blab is sort of a little bit in between, right?
Yeah, no, it's funny. It is. It's
meeting, but or talking, but very different
right.
Twitter experience.
Yes, and so If you were a new software company and not new, but you didn't have a community per se, what would you say would be the top reasons to create one of these communities? And then let's start there, and then I want to get into the sort of the challenges of actually doing this now, because there's so many other ways to engage with people.
I think it's again sort of going back to I think your original question, which is the purpose and bringing people together around a shared shared mission, I guess, or and trying to help each other out. So it's I think when you sell a product, you don't want to just be selling the product and maybe your company and the people, but you want to have a place for them to feel like they're part of the whole ecosystem, right? And it's not just you don't just buy something and then try and use it. You're always there are going to be things that come up, and maybe you want to extend it, or you want to see how other people are using it, and other peers are using it, and maybe there are other people out there that know how to use it better, and you can learn from them. Or maybe you found something really cool you want to share with how you used it. So I think it just expands and broadens the customer experience and makes it more rich and and engaging, I guess.
So I'm going to summarize and say that if you are a software company, you are silly not to have a community. I'm going to start with that assumption.
Okay.
Because if you really, all software companies should be customer centric, all companies should be customer centric, and having a community of users is sort of the ultimate place to start with customer centricity. I would argue.
Yeah.
I'm going to let we had a gentleman joining, and he lost his connection. So we're starting with that base that you should have a community. So let's now talk about, all right, what are the first steps? How do you do it? What kind of platform challenges do you face? I mean, if you were doing this, let's not say Ciena, but Percolate called you and said, Chip, I want you to set up a community for us. Where would you start? Where would you put this?
Well, I think it needs to be connected to your online presence. So in terms of sort of visually and how do you put it out there, it would be you need to have a part of your .com area and just say community and then let people engage. And today there are a number of folks that are able to help with that and do it in a way that's all cloud-based, so that it's not you don't have to build a bunch of infrastructure to make it all happen, and they can make it very much sort of seamless to fit within your branding and the interaction style that you already have for your website. So at SAP we worked with Jive. At MicroStrategy I worked with Lithium. Both great platforms and market leaders, and both able to bring not only the technology but also a lot of experience and consulting ability to get you sort of off the ground and kind of take you through the process of, okay, let's figure out who's our audience, who are our internal stakeholders that we want to have participate. How do we want to structure this, the community? What kind of topic areas and discussion, threads do we want to have? Who are the people that are going to be here, at the company that are going to support it? Who do we have already? Do we know that are outside that are passionate about the company that we want to invite in early? And then sort of communicating it and getting the community started and growing. So.
It's a process.
It's a process. Definitely a process.
And a couple of suggestions or questions that I see in the feed here. One is, have you had any experience working with Zendesk familiar with it at all?
I know them, but I have not worked in them.
Okay, and then there's a question about what is Jive?
Jive is a community platform, both for internal communities and external communities. Same thing with Lithium. So Jive software and Lithium software. Got
it. All right, so we have our community. One of the things that I would have said 6-7 years ago, there's the private communities are dead because we can just go to Facebook and we can have our communities there. Those folks who did that, at least in my opinion, particularly if they abandoned their private communities, probably made a huge mistake. Is the organic reach on Facebook is well below 1% now. They're, in your opinion, is it possible to have community on Facebook?
It depends on what you want to do. I think, in some ways, Facebook and Twitter, in a way they are a community. I mean, they do, you are interacting with people, you're responding to, things that come up, and, LinkedIn, even LinkedIn groups, there's some aspect of, community there as well. I think the value of having, your own hosted community is, you define the topics, you define the content and the participants. It can be open or but I think one of the biggest things that we found at SAP, and I think one of the biggest values of community is that when it's a part of your online presence, then it also actually helps drive a lot of organic SEO search. Because if you look at how Google ranks content these days, they're looking for engagement. They're looking for return visits and social shares and all that. So it's really with community that those kinds of things happen. So it really drives a lot of, then all of a sudden you've got this whole inbound organic traffic.
So we have...
in fact, the thing that was interesting is that at SAP, we got to the point where the community had equal to the traffic that SAP.com had.
Wow.
And all just...
that's a big number.
Yeah, we weren't paying
Organic traffic was bigger than the SAP.com.
Well, equal to, right. It was right.
Wow, that's amazing when you think about that and the power of that. So we have Manoj joining us. Thank you. Manoj, where are you calling from?
I'm in Manchester, UK.
Hey, Manoj.
And this is the very first time I'm trying Lab, so please
good for you.
My potential ignorance.
Good for jumping in.
No problem. Hey, jump on in. What you got a pressing question? We've got one of the world's greatest experts on communities for businesses.
I was just trying to find out a conversation, and I think you guys were touching on communities, and I got a new startup and very early stage for us to build community, but we are using Sendex, and Sendex comes with the community aspect. So we've initiated that, but it's still very early stage. So I built communities in the past. So I had a social network which is around documents called eDocker, which got acquired early this year. If you're familiar with SlideShare, it's a similar concept. So I'm just listening, and I'm sorry, I might be intruding. I don't know what the ethics.
No, we welcome it. No, thank you for joining, Manoj. I'll ask you a question. If you built a community, what do you think was made it succccessful for you?
I still don't think it was successful because it took so long. It took 8 years, but it was very hard work, and some of the community features were not taken up. So it was really hard. But the guys who acquired it, I think, has a better chance of getting more success, because it's also a timing thing. We were trying to make get a lot more ROI out of documents. Companies produce documents, PDF files, etc. And some of these are shareable, and we were trying to generate leads. We're trying to get conversation going around a document. And I think SlideShare was much easier because it was slides, and people go to an event and then they want to talk about it. Whereas documents, it's very passive. So to make that more active object and then have a conversation around that, the number of comments were very little compared to slides or videos or pictures. So it was a little hard work, but I'm hoping the guys who bought will make it a better, they'll make some success out of it.
Yeah.
Well, you raise an interesting point, and I think that's the thing that I one of the reasons I was excited to talk to Chip again is building communities is really hard. Building successful communities is extremely rare. You go to any LinkedIn group, any average LinkedIn group, and actually look at the level of engagement. It's people posting, nobody's commenting. You go to the average Facebook group, people are posting, nobody's commenting. Heck, you go to Diet Pepsi's page on Facebook with 16 million followers and see how many people actually liked a piece of content or shared it. You'll be amazed how small it is. So it's very hard, and I think that one of the things, and Chip can address this, is you really need a compelling reason for people to want to do this. And I think in the case of SAP, there's this. Look, they're working with this product every day, and it's their job to optimize the uses of it. So asking someone else how they do it is mission critical, and so they had a real reason to it. Whereas it sounded like in your case, you had to manufacture a reason for a conversation, and that's really hard. Chip, would you add to that?
No, that's Drew. You said it really well. I think that I think just hearing Manoj talk about the challenges that you had, I think that's in some ways for the SAP community it was built in, because exactly what you said, Drew. People are, this is their job, right? They're trying to solve something. They're trying to be successful with their company with some solution or software. And they could be out there on an island alone, trying to solve it, or they could say, "Hey, let me ask." Maybe somebody's been through this kind of thing, and they ask questions, and then there's this, long list of comments and answers, and and a conversation, starts around that topic. And some people may say, "Well, I did it like this," or "Why are you doing it that way? How about doing it this way?" And or have you seen this new tool? There's a whole conversation that can take place that helps that person be more successful. So it sounds like, I'm not sure if that kind of conversation, could happen around I'm not sure what kind of documents you had that you're posting or were posting in the solution. But I think that's it. It's the compelling motivation for the community to try and, talk and reach out and share and help each other.
Yeah.
One of the things I was thinking about is, go ahead, Manoj, you have a question?
One of the other thriving communities is we have a group on Facebook, but this is around startups in Manchester, and it's really thriving. So I think the numbers are probably getting close to about 2,000, but people do share, and it's around a common theme, because we were a little bit behind in terms of looking at Silicon Valley and London, but now Manchester is getting a lot of traction. So a lot of people are involved, and that is really thriving. So as a community, that's working out well. And yes, my previous experience didn't quite work that well. But I think that the other things like I'm finding is like Slack has some open communities, which is getting a lot of traction. So there are different ways, I think, people are finding ways to talk to each other.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think that the Manchester thing is there's a common passion point there. My wife is in a group on Facebook called I Love French Bulldogs, and someone will post something, and then there'll be 500 comments to that post immediately, particularly if it has to do with the health of the dog or how to treat the dog. So really, if you can have a passion and centralize that, obviously a community has a chance. I think you discovered that maybe people don't have a passion for for PDFs, at least, and maybe the folks that Adobe do. But they're not here to. We'll have to get them on our next blab to find out. I'm curious, Chip. While we're talking about communities, one of the things that those that I've noticed that have failed is that it's when you go to a party and there's no host, and a lot of people just sort of drift around the side, but there's no sort of, it's not as good a party as when you have a great host. What kind of staffing and hosting work did you have to, introduce people or introduce conversation? How big a team actually worked on the community to help it thrive?
Yeah, so the community started small. It started in 2003, and the team, the team then was very small. It was just a skunkworks team to get it off the ground. As the community grew, and the numbers might sound like crazy, but we did have we grew to the point. I mean, I had a team, a big team running it, but we had 450 different topic areas. So,
450.
Exactly. So there was a ton of, all the different products and sub-products and different areas and conversations that people wanted to talk about. And we had about 2.5 million unique visitors a month. So it was a very, active, engaged, we had 700 moderators to manage the 450 topic areas. So
700 moderators.
700 moderators. Yeah.
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 And you think about that, if you start to divide 700 by 2.5 million, you start to, that's all, and all those topics, it's not as many as it sounds.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. My team, I had a team of let's see, I believe 6 in sort of the engagement community that was working with managing the moderators, managing the content, managing escalations on topics that would come up and things like that. Managing all the SEO. We did a lot of SEO work to make sure that our content got good traffic. And then I had an editorial team of 10, but that included both. They were doing all the sort of the graphic, content, and we were selling ad space section on the side as well. And the content that we had was we were also doing newsletters, so we were publishing newsletters as well.
Right.
But the content that we had, the community content, always came from the community. But we had at the top, we would have sort of editorial. Really, you could really call it curated content. But that was the editorial team managed that, and they would find interesting content out in that somebody had contributed, and then they'd feature it, up on the top of the homepage. We had a billboard, leaderboard. Not leaderboard. We had a hero space where we'd have show some of the best content up there. Hey, John.
Hey, John. Manoj, I know you had a question about Quora, and I haven't forgotten about that, but I want to welcome John and say what's going on. Where are you dialing in from, John?
Hey, Drew. It's nice to meet you. I'm in the Washington, D.C. suburbs, so happy to come across you guys today. I just have a quick question for Chip. Kind of picture yourself for a minute if you were talking to, say, a marketing executive who was evaluating the concept of community for their business, and they're liking it, but at the same time, they've got, a dozen or more other sort of strategic marketing initiatives, and they don't have enough funding to say, I can't do all the dozen of these that I'd really like to do. So I need to prioritize, the best 3 or 4 to move forward for next year. What arguments do you think from a community perspective, like what argument would you make to that executive that sort of says, community must be in that top 3 or 4 new initiatives that you're doing in 2016, and here's why? I'd love to get your perspective.
Well, that's a great question, and I think one of the things that I think is really valuable about community is, and it's probably sort of it divides up into two different areas. One is that we actually, we saw this at SAP and at MicroStrategy, we justified the cost, the original cost of the community investment just based on our support call deflection. So what happens is, as you get these conversations going, somebody asks a question, and then there's an answer that comes from the community, and now you have the answer out there. And if it's all open and exposed, it's you do a Google search and it pops up at the top, And now, if somebody is able to answer that question in the community, they're not picking up the phone and calling your support desk, right? So it's not just yes, there are all these sort of brand effects and open engagement and all the positive things, but you can actually justify the cost just based on the cost savings or cost avoidance, right? I mean, as your
right.
company grows, you don't have to scale up your support team as much as you might otherwise have to, and you're still able to handle the call volume. So that's one thing. Is sort of just. It's in a way self-funding, right? For the but then you have all the positive effects, and the other thing. So you have the SEO benefits and just that engagement with your customers. But the other thing is, it's amazing the kind of content, the kinds of things that people will create. Yeah, I mean. Community generated content it's unbelievable, and nobody's getting paid for any of this, right? So we had blogs that would just go on for pages and pages of, screenshots and diagrams and code snippets and all this stuff, and now I did this and I did this and this is what happened, da, 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 da. And you can't pay for that kind of stuff, and if you were going to try and create it and pay somebody to do it, it's a huge cost, right? So now you've got all these benefits to your customer, and you got a much more effective product, and it didn't cost you anything. So I think there are.
I'm going to jump in and summarize just all these things. Yeah. By the way, so if we start with it, John, if you know what your cost per service center call is, so there's one number right there, and your cost per email service center cost, right? So those are two things, and if you figure, depending on the number of customers you have, right, you can multiply some percentage, you can get to a number. That's the first level. Then you know what it costs to drive traffic to your website, right? So whatever that CPM number is to drive traffic, and so you can put a dollar value on that, so the SEO value, right, replaces that spend value. It's at number three, and I wouldn't even put it as number three, as one of the really interesting things about customer contact and customer engagement is, I guarantee you, and I don't have this information from Chip, but I guarantee you that the people who use the community are happier customers than people who didn't, because they had an actual engagement. And so if you put that there and you start to measure things like Net Promoter Score and things like that, and you say, well, if I'm a customer-centric company and I have high-value customers here that are really happy, and they're 2.5 million. I think the number is now 3.5 million or 4, Chip. I think the number's grown quite a bit since you worked on it. But you start to add that math of the value of a happy customer versus a sad customer, and the business case can be really, really strong. It's just that upfront cost seems heavy because you've got to set it up and you got to staff it. And you really got to make sure that, think about it as a party and a host. You really have to make sure that you have good hosts on site to welcome the person in and say, hi, John, thanks for coming to my blab. And you're the greatest guy ever. Hey, John, did you meet Chip? Chip's an expert on this thing, and really trying to, bring the community together. And honestly, that's why most fail, is that there isn't a host and so forth. But then there's one other thing that Chip alluded to, and I want to dig in on, is he talked about advertising. You had basically a media website where you were getting 2.5 million uniques a month, and you were selling that space.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's did that? I know of another brand in the travel business that actually developed a community like that and generates enough traffic from the site and ad revenue from the site that they pay for the entire thing. How important was the ad revenue?
We didn't get to that level, but we did. We were, I mean, it was bringing in significant revenue, and we worked with our partner teams, to give them. So even if you look today, out at the SAP community, there's ads for HP and any number of our other partners out there, and they're looking for. They know what the audience is, and they could also we made it so that they could target their ads to the topic areas that made sense to them, right? Whether it's mobile or cloud or HR or financials or whatever.
Hey John, did you have a follow-up question? Because I've got another question or two from the feed, but
no, we'll jump into the other questions. Thank you, Chip and Drew.
But you please stay on, and it's great to have you here. And so someone asked Chip how. That's Craig, actually. How strictly you think these communities need to be moderated?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And, we had talked a little bit about it earlier that, a lot of times the community would almost self-moderate. I mean, not really, but they'd sort of self-correct. Like if somebody was sort of going off on a rant, that the community would come in and try and sort of bring them back off the ledge. But we moderated. Definitely had moderators that were actively, watching the things that were coming across. Our philosophy. There are different philosophies. I think there's, a lot of the systems allow you either to pre-moderate everything or pre-moderate certain types of, maybe they're new members and they go into a pre-moderation queue sort of thing. So they do a post and it doesn't go directly out there. The moderator has to actually, accept it and let it go out. We actually did do that, which helped with, sometimes we had, as we grew, when we got really big, we started actually also seeing the other problems like spam. We started at one point when we had somebody, we identified it to somewhere in Indonesia, I think, where somebody said it and they were just like trying to putting spam messages in there. So we had to fine tune their ability to actually post things in there. Anyway, I'm getting way off track, but
right. No, the spam is an interesting challenge, and I imagine that someone in the community could have written some code to stop that, but make that their challenge.
Right.
Hey, I wanted to ask you because Joanne Belby was
just to finish on that.
Okay, sorry.
But our philosophy was we don't take anything down, right? We don't take any content down. If somebody posts unless it's abusive or whatever, you take it. You kill it. But we did not take, if somebody had a complaint about something or had a negative comment, we did not take it down. We would let the community have the conversation, and we would respond. If we thought there was something factually incorrect, we would respond to it. But the philosophy was, look, they're a member of the community. It's a legitimate. We thought we would lose so much in credibility if we started, if we ever were to feel like we were censoring things, taking things out. So.
So before I so rudely interrupted you, and that I think that's a really important thing that you just said, that there is this let the community be a community, and freedom of speech reigns unless it's abusive. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering about legal and compliance, and I was hoping that Joanne wouldn't be shy. She works for Actience, and they're in the community management and compliance business and help a lot of people in financial services deal with these kind of things. But where did that fit in? Was there a lawyer sitting by there, or there must have been a lot of. First of all, there must have been a lot of nervousness in the legal department when you first set this up. And how did you sort of assuage their fears?
Good question. So we did have our friends in legal that were very much a part of our launch and our I wouldn't say day to day, but regular conversations, and it was mostly around. We had a lot of conversations around IP, so intellectual property, and in our terms of use document. So that was something that we set up when we first set it up. Right terms of use in place, and we actually did. And I'm hearing some feedback from you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had I made a mistake and had my headpiece on, which was also attached to my phone. I forgot to sync it. So right now I'm talking, and when I took the headpiece off, my music went on. So welcome to Blab. Anyway, I'm going to put my headpiece back on, but I'm going to ask you a question first, which is, was there any period during that during your term there where you went, holy cow, that was something amazing happened?
You know, a lot of times, but there's a story that I'll tell you that I thought was really cool, and it just because it was to me, it was sort of an emotional, you know, story. One of our guys actually was in the UK, was you know, a member in the community, and he grew and he contributed a lot. He actually got to the point where, and I talked a little bit about the mentors, he became a mentor, which was our group of sort of top community members. Started out a group of about 30, and we actually grew up to about 150. He became a mentor. He wrote a blog, I think about maybe a year or two after he had joined the community. And the blog was basically, he said, I used to go to technical conferences, and I would go to the conference, and I would, you know, go to my sessions, and I would learn as much as I could, and then I would go home. And he said, that was my experience going to technical conferences. He said, since I've joined the community, he said, you know, now that I've been in the community for a couple of years, and people in the community know me because I've you know, grown my reputation. I answer a lot of questions. I've gotten a reputation for really being, you know, having a lot of intelligence around it, you know, or knowledge around, expertise around around these topics. When I go to a conference, he said, it's a completely different experience. He said, I'm an introvert by nature,
right.
You know.
Right.
But I go to a conference and people are like, Steve, I won't say his last name, but his name is Steve. And I mean, he was like, everybody's coming up to me like, Steve, it's, you know, Steve, I wanted to talk to you. Or, you know, you know, can you tell me about this and that? He said, it's completely different. He said, I knew everybody, right. And everybody knew me, and I wanted to, you know, and to me, that was just like, that is so cool.
Exactly. Yay!
Like, wow. I mean, this person just like sort of like coming out of his shell sort of thing, and just like really, you know, just changing his life in many ways. So that was a real aha, you know, just wow moment for me.
And so, you know, one of the things that I personally believe in, and it's become a sort of a mission statement for our company, is the notion that marketing doesn't have to be pollution, and marketing can actually have genuine value. And if you look at communities, and there was a proof point right there that the community had genuine value that the community understood. Because obviously, if they didn't see the value, they'd leave, right? They wouldn't come back. And so they voted with their time, and they, in some ways, became more connected with the brand. To me, that's a quintessential example of marketing as service. And relative to all the other ways that you talked about, John, you know, how do you rationalize the investment? Well, I'd ask, where are they investing all this other money? And is any of that building genuine value that the customer will say, this changed my life. This gave me something that was helpful and meaningful and connected me with, you know, the human race, which is what Chip's story really comes down to. So I think the business case is there. You can do the math, but I think the other part of the business case is the philosophical notion that marketing can do something other than sell. Marketing can serve, marketing can have value. And when marketing has value, it has longevity. I mean, because the community now is, 12 years old? And it's,
yep.
You know, and I had hoped that I invited some people from SAP. They're obviously busy managing the community. But it's a growing, thriving thing, and they continue to invest in that area. Not that they're not doing other forms of marketing, but this one seems to be entrenched. So as we sort of wrap down here, Chip, I want to get to some sort of summaries and some brilliant pith here. So if we were to look at sort of the top 3 reasons to set up a community, 1, 2, 3, what would those be?
God. Well, I would say, connecting with your customers would be number 1. And I think it's, it's connecting in a more engaged, close and whatever. I mean, just a closer way. I mean, I think that's the number 1. And number 2, I would say, it's giving, great content to your customers and having a way for them to connect as well. And then, solving business problems and helping them be more successful. And you mentioned earlier the idea that community members tend to have, a better experience with a company than non-community members. And there is, I think it was a Forrester study that speaks to that exact point, that they did a study and measured net promoter score of companies that have community members versus non-community members, and had I can't remember the exact number, but there was a significantly higher net promoter score for people that were a part of the community and engaged in the community. So it has a positive effect on and it's almost table stakes these days. I mean, if you think about how, and again, going back to some studies from Forrester and Corporate Executive Board and Gartner, about how people buy, and you think about how you buy today, you don't just, you go on Yelp, you go to TripAdvisor, you go to, Uber has the rankings. I mean, everybody, you've got so much more information. But the Gartner study, I think, said, 60-70% of the buying process happens before a customer ever actually, B2B environment, before the customer ever actually picks up the phone and calls. So, a community is a great place to have that kind of, dialogue going on, that people can, get a sense of what the company's about, what the product's about, before they ever actually make an investment.
Okay, so that's the reason to it. What are the biggest sort of top 2 pitfalls and mistakes that you think that people might make when doing communities?
It takes time, and it takes work.
Yeah, so it really is. Right. It's really much more challenging than anybody imagines. Yeah.
Don't expect that you can just turn it on and have it run itself. And so I mean, I think that's huge. And I would say, be authentic. I mean, I think that's the other thing, is that's part of that. Don't take content down. Don't feel like, don't be afraid. I think if you're open and engage with the community and just kind of share your thoughts, that it's a little bit scary sometimes, but it's it's a positive thing, and you'll benefits, I think, accrue just based on that that approach to the market.
So I'm going to wrap up, and I want to tell a quick little story. So I've been talking with Chip Rodgers, who is the VP of Customer Experience Marketing at Ciena, and we've been talking about community building. And I wanted to share a story from my book, of course, that just to wrap up here, I know, it's okay. It's all good. This is what the book is about. It's about focusing on specific elements of marketing. Yeah. But I had a wonderful conversation with John Yembrick, who is the head of social for NASA. And he tells the story of when the government shutdown happened, that they weren't allowed to post at all. And the folks in his community on Twitter sort of realized that they couldn't post, and they said, all right, we'll do it for them. So, you know, that is the ultimate demonstration that you have really engaged your community when they take it over for you. And I thought that was such a remarkable story and demonstration of that. So, Chip, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch up offline sometime soon. And thank you to the rest of you, and have a great afternoon.
Likewise, Drew. Thanks for the invitation and for this session. This was great, and thank you everybody for joining. This was
all right. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye.